Hey, and welcome everyone. So great to see all of you. Thank you for being here and welcome. I'm Susie Polnazik. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the director of the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, or CNE. We're a program of the Community Foundation for Monterey County. And I want to invite Reed to introduce himself as well.
Thanks, Susie. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Reed Norris, Leadership Development Specialist at Center for Nonprofit Excellence. And we'd love to invite you to introduce yourself and your organization in the chat. We'll be using the chat today as a way to submit questions to our speakers and stay in touch and hear what's going on in your breakouts.
Great, yeah, thank you. To share a little bit about CNE's programs, our programs are here to support you as you deliver on your nonprofit's vision and mission. So that support can take different forms, like today's workshop or other trainings. We also offer office hours with our staff. We have support and other resources around leadership transitions, for example, or tuning up your financial leadership. And so we're really excited that you all have found this topic interesting. I know I'm going to learn a lot today, and I'm just so glad we could be together to do that. So Reed, maybe give a few shout outs to who we have joining so far.
Absolutely. We're seeing Sunset Centers, Boys and Girls Club in the house. I think Marlo from Living Unchained is actually in the house. She came to Community Foundation to join us, so that's extra fun.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks and welcome everybody. My colleague Ceci Romero paraphrased a saying, and it goes something like this: if we touch people's pockets, then we can do the work. If we touch their hearts, that's when real change can happen. And I think this saying captures the sense that we should never really underestimate the power of relationships. And so given that, let's take a look at where we're headed today. The purpose of today's workshop is to inspire a philanthropy mindset so that relationships and engagement with donors and supporters can feel more approachable, more accessible, more possible. And it's great to see so many folks with all levels of experience on this call. For some of your nonprofits, you may never have really previously put too much emphasis on the type of support from individual donors, and that's okay. I hope that everybody who's here today can find some value in our workshop. So we will be together for these 90 minutes, and we can look at it as our shared learning space, right? We will be recording a few parts of the session, but not the breakouts. The format will be a blend of speakers, small group discussion, and lots of opportunities for your questions. The recording will be for the purposes of you to share it with others or to reflect back on it later. And I just invite these 4 guiding ideas to guide our time together, acknowledging that we all have different lived experiences. It's important that we would respect confidentiality of what's shared today, especially in our small groups, to take space or make space so that everybody has an opportunity to participate in those discussions. Third, to take care of your needs. We will not have a formal break in this 90 minutes. Leave your camera on if you're able, but we do ask you to stay on mute for the presentations. And lastly, take some steps to prioritize this time. Maybe it's closing out all the other tabs that you have open on your screen, or closing the office door. Maybe it's just taking a few deep breaths and being able to participate fully. Great. Well, I look forward now to the honor of introducing our speakers today. We're really fortunate to have with us Dan Baldwin, who has led our Community Foundation for Monterey County as president and CEO since 2010. And prior to his work in the Community Foundation field, he has experience serving as the director of 2 museums. And so he has experience with that role of fundraiser for an organization. We're also joined by Stacy Alziebler Perkins, who has worked globally in finance and policy, as well as locally, now as the executive director for Gathering for Women Monterey, and that's since 2019. And her commitment to unhoused women in the Monterey community is truly inspiring. Stacy also serves as an advisor to our Center for Nonprofit Excellence. And so we're really excited that Stacy can join us for the second half of our program following our breakouts. And so with that, I would like to invite Dan to take it from here and share with us some stories and insights to help us dive deeper into this topic.
Well, thank you, Susie. I hope everyone can hear me okay. As I approach this topic, the challenges for me is to limit it to like 4 hours. I mean, this is something that I feel very deeply about. It's something I think about. I got my first executive director position in a museum in Dallas, Texas, when I was only 34, and I'm much older than that now, but I've been involved in philanthropy ever since. So I've just had so much time to work in the donor community, to think about this topic, to sort of like ponder a lot of the nuances. So I'm going to do a couple of things. One is I'm going to just start with just like something that seems really obvious, but is oftentimes I don't think thought about enough. And that is, I mean, just from a legal standpoint, the IRS has allowed people to make gifts to all our organizations and get a tax deduction for doing that. And so there's actually like from a business model standpoint, there's an advantage for donors to align themselves with your organizations. And it's one that I don't think enough organizations think about and utilize enough. Now I realize that there's a wide range of organizations represented here, some that have pretty robust development programs, and I know a couple of examples where you know, say 10 or 15 years ago, the development work was mostly around writing grant applications, either to state and governmental, you know, agencies, federal agencies, or to, you know, some of the large private foundations. And then through set of circumstances, generally some large project they got involved in, they realized they needed to start thinking about philanthropy and aligning themselves with individual donors. And then I've seen the benefits of that and how those orgs have really succeeded in maintaining those relationships. And then there's probably some of you that are thinking, it's like, holy cow, I mean, we're just getting started. Our board is not comfortable doing this. And I'm not really sure, you know, like what the path forward is. And then of course, there's the thing is like, who's comfortable asking for money? And so, and I actually want to address that a little bit. So I have a graphic that we developed, and I think Susie's going to put that up. We developed it internally here. This isn't something off of you can find online or anything, but we're happy to share it. We've never copyrighted it or anything, but it describes the sort of the transition, or the different types of relationships that you can have in your fundraising endeavors. And so it's just simply moving from fundraising to development work to then, like what we around here would characterize as philanthropy. Even though it's all philanthropy, someone gives you $10, that's a philanthropic gesture on their part. So, for those that are, sort of on the front end of this spectrum, and you're engaged in very straightforward fundraising, some of the options are: do we hold events? Do we send out direct appeals? Who does this? Is it the director of development? Is this the CEO? Is it the board of directors? And I think it's a little bit of all of the above. I think fundraising events are very labor intensive, and some organizations are really successful with them, and they actually raise a fair amount of their operating budget through them. But they're a real heavy lift, and it does sort of require the existence of a public profile, even to get one going. And so then that sort of, that first icon up there, that first graphic is, well, then you do it through like direct appeals, like whether they're like, just buying a mailing list or something and sending it out. So either one of those work, but I think the most important thing is to do what's right for your organization. I mean, how's it constructed? Who's what's the nature of your board? Is there a lot of energy? There are some local ones that had really highly networked founders that launched straight into the special event thing, and they raised a lot of money doing that. But I don't know that that's a recipe for everyone. So fundraising, on just sort of going down that left column, is something that's sort of based on appeals. It tends to be slightly impersonal because you're just sort of asking for money, and then you get that gift, and then you move on to the next person, and especially if it's done through appeals, it can feel a little impersonal, and then people can feel targeted, and that isn't necessarily a pejorative term, because it means that you've identified prospects that you want to go out and ask for contributions from. They tend to be, there are definitely exceptions, but they tend to be in the smaller range, because these are, sort of entry level gifts. Every now and then somebody surprises you with something major. And they're viewed sort of as transactional. Again, you get the gift, you make an appeal, you get the gift, you write a thank you letter, and then what happens? So I realize there's different capacities, there's different bandwidths inside of all, your organizations. But in order to really have an engaged donor development program, you might need to start with that left column, that fundraising column. But in the way that you steward your donors, in the way that people align themselves with your organization, you need to stay in contact with these people. You need to invite them in. It's that last graphic there. It's very relational. And so years ago, especially when I was museum director, and people would say, well, how do you, asking people for money. How do you ask people for money? And I would say it's really it's the sincerest expression of my belief in the mission. And I'm asking people to join me. And it's their option whether they want to or not. So I was never self-conscious about it, because I mean, I'm doing the work, so I should feel very aligned and very committed to it. But one of the differences between, fundraising and development, and you can kind of put the two as like one activity, one leading more towards the other, and development is as much a mindset as it is a set of activities. And you can apply that mindset to, like, the left column, to fundraising. But it's really about being attentive. It's about sharing the work that you're doing with people that have an affinity for it. And at the end of the day, rather than, I mean, there is a transaction where they're providing a gift and transferring funds from that's theirs to you, but it's the sense that you're all doing this work together, and it's part of an equation and a partnership where they're assisting in the work that you do. One of the and this is, I have, Susie and Reed can tell you, I'm a walking dictionary of pet phrases, and one of my pet phrases is that impact attracts resources. And what that really means in this context is that, that word appeal, it just sounds like you're begging or something. But if there is a letter, a solicitation letter that goes out, if you're in a conversation, if you're having a lunch, whatever it may be, lead with impact. Tell the stories of your work. And that's what's going to get people excited. That's what makes people want to join you in your mission delivery, whether it's around the environment, whether it's around homelessness, whether it's around education or youth development, anything related to healthcare, housing. There's so much great work going on in Monterey County in all of these areas, and there are a lot of people that have a particular interest in supporting it. And so once you've identified those people, or they've identified themselves to you, make them feel part of what you're doing, rather than just having them, well, we're only really interested in your money. No, make them feel part of what you're doing. So I do want to make a reference here to Monterey County Gives, and if you are, I assume almost all of you, your organizations are in Monterey County Gives, and so what we've really discovered, or it's been revealed to us, especially over like the last 5 years, where the thing has just grown. I mean, it raised $11.9 million this year, and we're very sincere when we say we never could have imagined it would have gotten this large. But Bradley Zeeb, the CEO of the Weekly, and we were chatting recently, and we wondered, we don't know, and this could be something we're gonna explore as a data piece. Who made their first contribution in their lifetime, their first charitable contribution in their lifetime through Monterey County Gives? And so, and what that means is that it's opening for the organizations that are in Gives, it's opening up a window into your organization for people to become supporters. I did have a friend say she went on the website, Gives website, to make one gift, and ended up making 5, because she started cruising around through the website and saw these things, all these different agencies and the work they were doing. So it really behooves all of you and all of us that are engaged in this to really put your best foot forward. Never be self-conscious about it. Never, be overly self-effacing. I'm not even a fan of the word charity, because that makes it like a very hierarchical relationship. I really, and donors are partners in what we're all trying to accomplish for our mission deliveries in our organizations in Monterey County. So everybody's stretched. Bandwidth is an issue, no matter how large or small. an organization, and everybody has, different levels of expertise in software and capacity inside their organization. But donor development and fundraising and moving towards development should be present all the time. And it can even be as simple as messages in your newsletter, social, messages at the bottom of all your, your social media communications. There could be a repetitive nature to this that always keeps you in the idea that your organization can receive contributions. Now, I'm just going to say, if somebody comes to you with something you've never heard of, like a charitable remainder trust or a charitable gift annuity, or they want to gift their house, they want to do something that, oh my goodness, we can't do that. Just say yes and call us, and we will help you through that process. And one of the hardest things, toughest things to do is to say no when a donor comes to you. So what this means is that it moves towards this right-hand column philanthropy. Now, another one of my pet phrases, there is no luck in fundraising. So, people say, oh my goodness, some board member might say, oh, we're so lucky we got like this $30,000 gift. Well, people didn't just pin the tail on the nonprofit. I mean, they chose to give to your nonprofit because of the work that you're doing. And I see that. Could I speak up a little? Am I not being heard very well? Let me make sure. I had an issue earlier where it was the wrong microphone that was being used. No,
I can hear you fine.
okay, thank you. But there is no lack of fundraising. People give because as a reaction to the work that you're doing. And so lastly, before I turn it back to Susie, I know some business models really may emphasize grants from state, federal, county agencies, or private foundation grants, or insurance reimbursements. But to ignore, I believe, donor relationships and developing individual relationships is a huge mistake. And from our vantage point at the Community Foundation, we can see the scale of philanthropy that exists and the resources that exist. And it's not just like all the usual suspects of these ultra rich people. There are a lot of people that have resources and they're interested in giving. But I do get phone calls periodically from organizations that either at the end of their fiscal year or the calendar year or at a certain point, they're having some kind of financial problem. And then they'll ask, and they'll say, well, what can the Community Foundation do? And we'll walk through different things. And I'll ask them, like, well, what's your donor base? And some of them say, well, we really don't have a donor base. So when that happens, they have no group of donors that are aligned with their work to turn to. And then I'll sometimes ask, like, well, what about your board? And the answer will be, well, we're really not a fundraising board. Well, all boards can participate some way in fundraising just by bringing their network, by being ambassadors. And so developing these systems are hugely important, even on, for a whole variety of reasons that I have already gone over here. So Susie, I fear I went over my time, but
You did not. You did not. You did great, Dan. Thank you. I know there was a lot there. I wanted to just follow up on one piece, if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to share a little more. Early on, you mentioned the role or the importance of being attentive to when and how a donor or supporter is aligning with your impact and in your organization. And I wondered if you could share any I don't know, tips, or how do you kind of orient yourself to be attentive in that way?
Well, I mean, the most basic fundamental thing is acknowledgement. And so, I mean, we have donor advised funds, and donor advisors make grants, and at times I'll have an organization follow back up with me and ask me, well, like, do you think that they're going to make that grant again? And my question back is like, you mean you didn't thank them when they provided that earlier support? There is, you know, when somebody even like comes in to volunteer at an organization, or if somebody just makes an inquiry, or if they've made their initial gift, there are, you know, you just want to be in communication with them, and then, you know, learn to recognize it's like, oh, this person really cares. And sometimes it can be, especially if it's a healthcare thing or a mental health thing, someone in their family has a history, or they were touched personally by the work that you do. And when you hear that, and it's not like I mean, because people really get turned off if it's like you go, ooh, you know, and you're like, oh my goodness, I think there's opportunity here. No, it's more about inviting them in to learn more and to become part of what you do, and being attentive to those opportunities.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, this is a great opportunity for us to segue to our small group discussions. And as we prepare to do that, I'll bring back our slides here with our prompt questions. And give us just a moment. So as we go into small groups, this is a chance for you to introduce yourself again to your peers that are joining you, and we'll have about 15 minutes. So not a real long time, but I think long enough to reflect a little together on how this is landing for you in your own work. You know, what part of donor engagement and this relationship building feels, hey, I feel pretty confident about this, or maybe there are aspects of it that just are feel very far away, less approachable. And then maybe a little more thinking ahead about your own work. Are there places where you could add in some habits or build a muscle to bring this philanthropic mindset to your work? And so that's how we'll guide our small group discussions. Then we'll come back and have a chance to share out a little bit in the chat. And with that, I'll ask Reed if we're all set to go.
We are ready to go, and you can find these prompts in the chat as well.
Great, thank you. We'll see you in about 15 minutes.
In our community. So as Susie said, I'm Stacey Alziba Perkins. I'm the Executive Director of Gathering for Women Monterey, and I've been in this position since 2019. I did some fundraising in a prior life based around human rights in the international fields. And I was starting around the time when UNICEF started developing a different campaign. And I don't know how many of you would remember that they were doing a lot of little kids with very sick and hungry. And they realized that that wasn't really the way to go, that you really need to show the success story of the little kid who actually got the medicine and was able to kick the ball down the road. And you could see how far your money went, because if you focused on all the bad stuff, that people just got exhausted and figured they couldn't really make a difference. And I think Gathering for Women is a really good example of that in a different way. Our organization was started by five volunteers in the very beginning that grew to about 150. And a lot of the donations in our very beginning were from those donors and from friends of those donors. And we've grown over the years to a sizable organization. We're now at about 1.4 million with a very small staff still. But a lot of our donors are small donations. They're between $100 to $150. In McGibbs, we had over 500 donors and we raised, I think, just over 200,000. But none of them were huge. And I think part of that is because of the story that we tell. And part of that is the fact that we come from a passion in our heart and believing in what we really do. And I think that's one of the most important things for me. And when we were preparing for this conversation, I was reflecting when I started here back in 2019, which was right before the pandemic. And I'd been out of California for a very long time. And as they say, as executive director, bring your Rolodex. Well, I didn't have a Rolodex. And so I was kind of in a pickle, and we were having a bit of a struggle. And I think one of the things that really got us through was that passion and being able to say, look, we're kind of in trouble here. We need some help. And we had the Big Sur Bakery show up one day with a bunch of bags of food when there was nothing on the shelves. And we had restaurants that were volunteering to donate meals for us. And we had donations that were coming in to help support our staff to make sure we could keep them employed. And I really believe that's truly because of the mission. That's because of what we were doing. And because of the need in the community, but also because we were able to show our success and show how much we really believed in the most vulnerable in our community. So I really encourage you to I saw in the comments that a lot of you are talking about your passion. It's true. Share that passion with people, because that's what's going to get people to donate to your organization, is showing them your success and showing them how much you believe in what you're doing. I don't know if Dan wants to add to that.
Yeah, I was reflecting on some of my own experiences, and I think I improved my microphone situation from the Department of what drives us all nuts. Our IT people redid stuff, and now it changed everything. So I wasn't aware of that, so I apologize. So now I've changed it back. So you know, I was thinking about Gathering for Women earlier. Stacy and I chatted a bit about this, and how, you know, the focus of those early supporters was just so much on the plight of homeless women, but then offering very productive, very practical programs for them, as well as a place to come together, and how well that resonated with people. And it was and to what Stacy was talking about, UNICEF, it really accentuated the positive aspects of what they were doing and how they were able to support these women who were in, you know, some, you know, either homeless or very vulnerable. So the one thing, going back to something really rudimentary, and I apologize to those that are well beyond this, but even look at Monterey County Gives. So if you're in Monterey County Gives and you have 27 donors, and they received a, you know, just like a computer generated acknowledgement letter, but did you all examine those names? And did you look at someone that was new and gave like $500? I don't know who that person is, or could be, you know, sometimes it's 1,000, sometimes it's more, but, you know, depending upon the scale, but let's just use this $500. And did you find out who that person was? Did you make special contact with that person, and not like ask them for more money, but ask them if they wanted to know more about your organization? And would they like a tour? Would they, you know, any sort of thing to let them know that you noticed that they made this gift, and that that you appreciated it and you're interested in knowing more about them as a person. So, I mean, nobody comes in our office without me finding out like where they grew up and how they end up in Monterey, and just the sense that, oh, we're all people and we're all interested in one another. But just a real basic aspect is this is donor stewardship. There's a local guy who's really, really famous. And when he gets solicitation letters, he wets his thumb and he runs it over the signature to find out if it's a real signature or if it was computer generated. And if it was computer generated, he pitches it. And so I sign all our letters, and but anyway, those details really matter. If you knew the person, if you knew they gave last year, write a little note, say thank you for giving again. Your support is so meaningful, and because they want to know that you've noticed. And so anyway, that's just a little. I realize that some may be well past that, but maybe this is new to some, and so that's like something that we really try to emphasize.
Dan, to follow up on that, I think I totally agree with you that that personalized touch is really, really important. And all my thank you letters, if I know the person, I try and make a little comment when I sign it and ask whether or not, like you, they've been running lately. Or recently I was having a conversation about 5 little kittens that I know someone likes to foster. I think that's hugely important. And it's if you picture, this is just another person. And for me, when I first started, that was really, really hard. I'm not a fancy person. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. And so if I'm talking to somebody and I'm asking for money, it's realizing that if they're going to give me money, it's not about putting my hand out and begging for something. It's actually supporting what I'm doing and what my organization is doing, and meeting them as just another individual, as someone who wants to support the organization because they have the money to do so, even if it's not a lot. But finding out about them, learning about them, what makes them interested, what makes them want to donate. Maybe they have someone in their past that was homeless, or maybe they even experienced homelessness. Maybe they were hungry and they almost were homeless. Making that connection of why they want to give and making sure they feel really appreciated. And it's actually one of the ways that we appreciate our volunteers as well, is to connect with them and know what's going on in their lives and make sure we say thank you, and making sure that they're aware that we couldn't do it without them, and that partnership both with volunteers and with donors. I like that quote that Melissa Mahoney just said. If you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money.
Reed or Susie, any questions popping up out there that you want to prompt us with?
I was thinking of one that came up in a previous conversation we talked in the breakouts about kind of building this muscle and building habits around donor engagement. For people that are brand new or perhaps intimidated by this, I'm thinking of a new board member. How can you involve them in the donor relationship in a way that seems approachable?
Well,
So
go ahead,
sorry.
Stacy. No, yes, Stacy, go ahead.
So 2 things. One is that we do a donor thankathon to our high donors in the beginning of the year and at Thanksgiving. And it's just a phone call, and it takes about, 3 minutes. And we say thank you. We say, here's what we've been working on. We're so supportive of your partnership. And oftentimes we actually get a donation, even though we're not asking. But it's a way to connect with that donor and make sure that they know that we really care about them, and tell them what's going on. And I forgot the second thing. I'll come back to it.
Well, I see Esther's question about what's more effective, sending handwritten thank you notes or phone calls. I think it's kind of like, who's the individual or what's the culture of your organization? I mean, I'm going to make like full admission here. I've never been, it's probably because I have such terrible penmanship, that I've never been a real, handwritten note person, but I do write notes on the bottom acknowledgement letters. I just don't like, write notes on note cards. And then, but I do call people, and that's just sort of my style. I think and it also has to do with who the person is. I mean, today it seems impersonal, but I'll send a lot of emails that thank people and show appreciation. That's kind of how it's a form of communication that we're all geared to. I don't think anybody thinks it's particularly impersonal, because it depends on the message, as long as you make it clear that you were writing something to that person.
I remembered what the other thing was that I was going to say, and that's that I think my board struggles a little bit with donations and asking for donations. And I think I try and tell them that it's really about sharing your passion about the mission and not about asking for money. And oftentimes, if they don't give a donation, they'll join as a volunteer. So making that connection, just that way, even if you think that you're not wealthy and you don't have wealthy friends, maybe your friend has a wealthy friend, but it doesn't really matter as long as they support your mission.
Yeah, I reinforce that, and I realize I said something about it a little bit earlier, but often when people say, well, we don't have a fundraising board, I don't know what that means, because there's so many ways to participate in the fiscal health of the organization. And what Stacy just said, a lot of it is just using, bringing their network and being ambassadors. And if you have a special event, buy a table and invite people. You're not asking them for money. You're exposing them to the organization and to the mission. And there's lots and lots of ways that board members can participate, short of going out and asking their friends for money.
Thank you. We do have another question that came in from Audrey at Resource Conservation District. And Audrey asks, does anyone have positive experience working events to cultivate awareness with the community and building your contacts for sending out fundraising campaigns via email or mail?
We've definitely had some really positive experiences at the farmers market, especially the one up in Del Monte. You're able to have a table. You can't actually solicit funds, but you can have a sign-up sheet for volunteers and getting people on your email list. And so I highly recommend doing any of those community events with a little table. Just gets your name out there and gets you a little bit of publicity. And usually it's free of charge. You just need volunteers or staff to man it.
Well, at our own events, we make sure not just to invite the usual suspects. I mean, we really try to be strategic about who we're inviting. So it's, whether it's the professional advisor community, whether it's that would be like estate planning attorneys and CPAs that are out talking to their clients, or whether it's for lack of a better word, prospects. We just held our Legacy Society luncheon last week, and we have like 3 new funds. And because all we really did was tell our story. We never asked anybody for anything during the event. We just told our story. So but again, you have to sort of manage your expectations, because they are labor intensive. I love Stacy's example of like piggybacking on something that's already in existence and getting out there, and then elevating your organizational profile that way. It's always really important to capture these names, emails, whatever, and addresses, and get them into your database. And if somebody wants to like opt out, they'll let you know. But but the repetition of messages can be very, very powerful in terms of telling your story.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a couple more questions for you. One is from Barbara, who asks, what questions could nonprofit staff or board ask to kind of jumpstart the thinking about you know, donors who have that alignment, who might be most, have that affinity for the mission and the impact, to sort of get those, maybe, I guess you use the word prospect, or get the list going. So do you have an idea of a set of questions is what she's asking?
Gosh, we definitely do not have a set of questions and probably should. But usually it's just talking about, making sure to share your mission with whomever you think is of interest, and having well, in the old days, they called it an elevator speech. I don't know if they still call it that now, but a little summary of 3 to 4 sentences of what you do and why it's important, and why it's changing your community.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, and I know the Community Foundation probably appears to be this thing that's like always moving in the right direction when we hope so. But we internally go through processes all the time where we're asking ourselves, are we asking the right questions? And how are our systems aligned to make sure that we're not only asking the right question, but we even understand what the right questions are. And I'm in a process right now. So I think, Barbara, some of that can just be get everyone around the table, spend an hour asking yourselves, what are the 3 core priorities of our organization? And then how does that communicate? How can you then turn that into a communication piece, whether it's not necessarily a printed piece, but just something that everybody's equipped with. And then that also starts to reveal who should you be asking. And it starts to reveal, like, who are your logical partners.
I think it also goes back to the impact in storytelling, because you really do need to be able to show that you're having an impact. And so we do a lot of data analysis of how many people we've served, and how many people have moved into housing, how many people have received our meals and our clothing, and being able to showcase that, to say, here's what your $25 or your $50 contributed to making happen. It's not necessarily getting a list of people who are going to donate, but it's giving people tools that they can go out and show what we're doing in the community.
So we just had a revelation as we're putting together our annual report for the 2023 annual report. And again, this goes to this process of always this inquiry that never ends about, like, how we're communicating and what we're communicating. So we realized that, an annual report just kind of like says, here's what we did last year. And the numbers are always kind of interesting, but it doesn't really like show, like, over time what your organization did. So this year we're going to use our annual report to, like, with some of our data points to actually then do like 3 and 5 year look backs. Like, if you look at our scholarship program, so we did $2 million of scholarships in 2023. And that's great. That's a big number. And then you can kind of imagine, like, oh, that would have a lot of impact. But what if you said, and $10 million over the last 5 years? Then you really begin to think, oh goodness, think of the number of lives that affected, the number of scholarships that you gave out, what that means over time. So there's lots of ways of looking at how you can communicate your impact.
Great. I appreciate all the questions that are coming in. We have a technical question about what's your thoughts around all the technology available for example, texting campaigns or CRMs that have all sorts of special features?
I think some of that has to do with who your audience is. I mean, we use this term native technology user. I am not classified as one of those people. So we actually still print like a a newsletter that we mail, but we also have big social media blasts and awareness too. So if you're using, if you're involved in a organization that is, where you really believe that you're generationally a certain type of communication, like texting, will really, that's how they like to receive their information, then that's fine. CRMs are great, but at the end of the day, it's like, how are you sort of like touching people where, in the manner that best suits them? And if you're, if this is about like Peace of Mind Dog Rescue, which is really about a lot of how seniors are going to be able to, you think of this as an animal welfare, but it's an organization, but it's not. It's a program for people that love their pets, and the people are aging and they want the peace of mind to know, well, a texting program to that group isn't probably going to be very effective.
I have to agree 100%, Dan. We tried a QR code, and I can't even do a QR code. So our donors are definitely not going to do the texting thing.
Thanks. I'll pick up on another question from Read to Me Project. Amanda Evans asks about time and the time investment in this donor stewardship, donor engagement. And she asks, any tips for balancing the time required to cultivate relationships with the streamlining required to keep in touch with a large number of donors when you have few resources, not a lot of money or staff or board members? No one has ever heard of that situation before.
So for our organization, we have never had a development director. I'm kind of it. And that's new to this role within the last 5 years. And I have one assistant who's part-time. So it takes a lot of effort, and I recognize that, Amanda. I would say already I would focus on them as much as you can and cultivate them, and then as you can grow your donors, because it's a lot easier to keep them once you have them than to go out and find them. But of course, you want to do both.
Well, at a certain stage of organizational development, you have to decide where to invest, and investing in staff is not a one-time thing, because you're going to pay them every year that they're there. But as you grow, sometimes there's just software that you can buy that can make managing this really efficient, and that's a one-time expense. And so that might be a bridge between where you are and trying to get to a next step. But this is the ever-present question at certain stages of organizational development. I mean, here we are, I'm looking at Stacy. Gathering for Women has one of the, especially on the peninsula, one of the highest profiles of an organization, and people rave about it and all its successes. Yet you haven't grown yet into having a director of development position. So where Amanda's coming from in this question.
I do very much.
Great. Well, Dan, I see a hand raised. Let's see. Jasmine, you had a question.
Yes, hello. Well, we know in Monterey County, there's, sort of what's been known for a long time as the agriculture or the lettuce curtain. And so when we're working towards building that donor relationship, how can we, and maybe this is a question for everyone, how can we as different organizations really work towards opening that curtain and making connections so that donors are, being involved from across the county and maybe not just from specific areas? Are there any tips or advice on how to really open that, lettuce curtain?
Thank you for that question.
I'm not sure I could answer the lettuce curtain question. But what I can answer is that I personally believe that we can't solve all these problems on our own. And so, for instance, there's an organization right now called the Equine Healing Collaborative that's really struggling because of some of the ways that they're reimbursed for their mental health assistance in our community. And so I made it a point to tell my friends that they need support. I made it a point to tell all the people in my networks that they really need support. That doesn't benefit us at all necessarily, although some of our guests do go to mental health programs there. But some of it's just collaborating within other nonprofits, even if they're not related to yours, and just supporting each other across the lines. And that to me is how we're going to make a difference. So it's not directly related to your question, but I think collaboration really is key to making some of the differences we want to see in our community.
So I think board development's part of this as well, to try to make sure that you have board representation from as many parts of the county, that all the parts of the county that you work in. And so then you have ambassadors that can then bring their network in. It's okay that in this context you mentioned Lettuce Curtain, but we started with this by banning the use of the term. It's not allowed to be said in our offices, and because then it's just a reinforcement. And but I would, there are opportunities, and I think it's probably got to start with recruiting board members that can then bring in their network from whatever part of the county they come from.
Thanks, Dan and Stacy, and Jasmine, I really appreciate your question, and I think we have maybe an opportunity time-wise to hear if there's anyone else that wants to comment on that question, or ideas or thoughts. You can feel free to in the chat, or if you feel comfortable coming off of mute. Just because I feel like we all may bring a different perspective on this question. Yeah. Jasmine, any other thoughts that you wanted to
Oh,
add?
I appreciate the guidance. Yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, I know we did have a few additional comments, resource sharing in the chat. Thank you. We'll be sure to gather those and share them back as notes, and share any additional tips that we may not have been able to cover. But I thought as a way to close today, we could just invite you to take a moment and think of maybe in 2 or 3 words, if there's anything that you'll be taking away from today's session, and if you could drop those into the chat, that would be a great way to kind of harvest what's been covered or what we've learned today.
Yeah, thank you so much for your sharing and kind of peer support and learning today. I saw one question we didn't get to too was around legacy giving. So I'm going to tease here. We've got an upcoming workshop that Susie's going to share about demystifying the different kind of funds that are available through Community Foundation for Monterey County. So we'll definitely be touching on that topic. I'm seeing in the chat that the Thankathon is a great idea. I love that because and I think anybody can participate in thanking donors, and that's such a fun part of building the donor relationship. What are other ways people are going to connect with donors going forward? Authentic relationships, impact attracting resources. I see Dan's got his hand up. Dan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I know you thought I did that accidentally. So on the legacy question, I saw that question and then it got, sort of went by. What I tell people, what I tell organizations is that just as a starter, and this isn't really a legacy society, it's more a plan giving question, but in every newsletter and every annual report and every communication, And you know, if you haven't built out a formalized sort of plan giving program, just put a line in the bottom, a little tagline that says, did you know you can leave and then name your organization? You can name them, our organization, in your estate plan. And just this recurring message. And one of the things that happens around here is that, you know, you can send that message 20 times. And on the 21st time, somebody has got an appointment with their attorney. And then they'll go, Marge, hey, did you know that we could leave Gathering for Women in our will? I didn't know that. And just, so that's the easier, I mean, Legacy Society has got different levels of complexity, and CNE is going to have program around that. But just in terms of promoting plan giving, just do it through like real simple recurring messages to get started. And believe me, sometimes that really creates some remarkable gifts.
Great, thank you. Well, we do have a few items to close with, including something we do at each of our CNE workshops is an opportunity for you to provide anonymous feedback on how we did today. Reed's going to drop a link into the chat. It goes to a Google form, which is our feedback and evaluation. So please do take a moment to fill that out. It really does help us to know where we could strengthen for next time, especially. And because I know we're all here on this call interested in how we can develop our fundraising and philanthropy muscles, there are some other opportunities for your groups coming up in about 3 weeks. On the 27th, CNE will host a presentation. It'll be hybrid, so there'll be an opportunity to come either to our Monterey office or participate via Zoom. And this will be staff of the Community Foundation sharing more information about our donor advised funds and other fund types at the foundation, and really helping nonprofits learn how they can make the most of donor engagement and just better understand the nuts and bolts of some of these fund types. You're all welcome to participate, and it's free. And on the April the 18th, the Chronicle of Philanthropy has offered a webinar on a similar topic, but really from the perspective of how nonprofits can understand the ways that fund holders of DAFs or donor advised funds are using that fund type to give to their community. So there is a charge for that. I think it's about $70 for the webinar, but we thought it was timely and wanted to pass it along to you. And last but certainly not least, you know, many of you are may not be aware that within our community there's a chapter of an organization called the Association of Fundraising Professionals, or AFP. And it sounds really fancy, but they are really fun. And it's a membership-based group, and they do monthly coffee meetups. They alternate between Salinas location and Monterey, and anyone can participate. And I mention that because it's a place to kind of throw out all your questions about Little Green Light or donor database, or what are you doing for this event and who did you work with on that. It's a lot of opportunities to hear from your peers that are working locally. It's also a chance to just gain in more skills, and they have access to trainings from national experts and that kind of thing. So if you haven't already, consider that membership, and we'll be sending out some more resources for that after today's call. And with that, I really want to take a moment to thank our speakers, Stacy and Dan, and just the time that you gave today and your perspectives, and also all of you for being here and participating and learning together. Thank you. And since many people asked, we will be sharing the recording after this.